Hey you, it's True with a review of the new Dark Ludmilla. This is already her 10th solo release, catching up to Reset and not even counting the Clarice combo. But it's the first of the Dark element and as such the most DPS heavy Ludmilla, while still bringing some of her usual guarding and supporting abilities with her.
命令により推薦した。我が剣は正義の剣だ。たとえ全てが怪人に帰しても、悪の討伐を実行しなければならない。
The speed still characteristically stays on the lower side, even though she's the fastest Ludmilla with 361 speed. Can Zigzag's new favorite character carry out absolute justice regardless? Her first active skill is called Dark Drain and is probably the skill that you're gonna see her use the most. It gives 1 spirit and it also gives her immediately the next turn as well. This additional turn effect cannot trigger again until time units advance. If she uses it again regardless, then this costs 50 time units. What does it do? It grants all allies stealth and a burn ward, and on the other hand all enemies the mega poison status effect for 200 time units, overwriting other status effects on those units. Afterwards it steals up to 1 spirit from the enemy team for each poisoned enemy on the battlefield. So if she succeeds in poisoning all enemies, that is a 4 spirit steal on top of the 1 spirit gain that this skill produces. Meaning if your team and the enemy team both have 5 spirit before Dark Ludmilla uses that skill, afterwards one team will have 10 spirit and the other one will have 1 spirit. And if that is the case, or rather if the enemies are having rather low spirit, then Dark Ludmilla will use the degrading slice next, and that one also gives 1 spirit to her team and costs 70 time units, damages 2 enemies, and the damage output depends on the enemy team's spirit. It starts at 250% if the enemy team has 6 or more spirit, but then increases to 400, 550 or even 700% damage if enemy spirit is 0. Okay, I should probably mention the other spirit tiers as well, because they are not super intuitive. If the enemy spirit is 4 to 5, then it's 400% damage, and 1 to 3 is 550%. So it's not exactly a linear thing in terms of the enemy spirit condition, but in terms of damage scaling it is. And on top of that, of course, you could also have some enrage effects. So this could deal over 1000% damage to 2 enemies each. However, unfortunately, it does not ignore armor, but to be fair, that would make that skill too overpowered in combination with her passives that we are gonna look at very soon. But it does ignore the counterstand status effect, so that is very helpful, and it also ignores skin passive skills. Not stealth though. And you might have already seen on the battlefield that Dark Ludmilla has a Hold Ground Plus. How can she reset that? With her 3rd active skill that is only unlocked when that Hold Ground Plus gets triggered. Then she can use this instant skill called Unleash Chaos. Costs 1 spirit and 1 time unit. Heals all allies for 1000% of the user's attack. Steals all spirit from the enemy team. Dark Ludmilla enters Chaos Rage for 100 time units. This is a little bit reminiscent of Dark Lancelot, because while in Chaos Rage her attack is increased by 50%, so she's basically permanently enraged, even though unfortunately that does not stack with other enrage effects, and she also becomes immune to sleep and stun. However, Dark Ludmilla cannot use this, or rather cannot enter this Chaos Rage while there are any allies with Burn Blast or Burn Drive type active skills on the battlefield, meaning she is a hard no for any burn team. Definitely a unit that is more meant to be anti-burn. As I mentioned, this is only unlocked when her Hold Ground Plus has been triggered. This effect, or rather this skill, then also resets that skill effect. So she has Hold Ground Plus again and it can be triggered again. However, she can only use this skill 3 times per battle. So that means potentially 3 refreshes of her Hold Crown Plus. And on top of that, all the other goodies that I just listed. Her final skill probably has one of the shortest descriptions I've seen in a while. It is called Full Force, 50 time unit cost, 3 spirit cost, and 600% damage to one enemy, ignoring enemy damage reduction effects. However, you will only rarely see this skill, as you also saw on the screen, because this is usable only if the user is not a guardian. And even if she's not a guardian, then she might still choose to use the degrading slice anyways. But yeah, all these active skills sound pretty good, but there were already some hints towards her passives, to say the least. And some of the other passives that were not hinted at yet make her even stronger, and especially all her active skills as well. So let's check them out. Her first passive is called Corrupted Guard and specifies that she will become a guardian if she enters the battlefield and there is no ally guardian on the battlefield, which is an interesting mechanic for sure. And she will also become a guardian each time she defeats a non-conjured enemy with an attack while on the battlefield and has any other allies left. Now, when does she stop being a guardian? Each time she activates Unleash Chaos. However, as we saw before, when she activates Unleash Chaos, she becomes much stronger and it might be easier for her to actually get a kill and activate her guardian mode again. Although again, it has to be a non-conjured enemy that is killed by an attack of Dark Ludmilla. We already mentioned that she has a Hold Crown Plus status effect. If this unit would be defeated, it instead survives with 1 HP and then cannot be defeated or stunned until its next turn. This is a bit of a Hold Ground plus effect in that way, but of course this can be ignored by execute skills. Dark Ludmilla is also immovable, so not that easy to get rid of this guard once she's there, if she is a guard. But even if she isn't, then she's still immovable, just to be clear. She has a base 25% damage reduction from attacks. However, if you fully awaken her, she will get 65% damage reduction. So she has some awakening scaling. In combination with the guard mode, 65% armor is quite strong, especially also with the Hold Crown Plus effect and some other things that we haven't even covered yet, because she will also be healed for 50% of her max HP each time an enemy gets the turn while the enemy team's spirit is at 2 or less. It doesn't stop there, because in the second passive we get a bombshell, because Diabolic Knight specifies each of this unit's attack ignores any effects of non-boss enemies that would prevent their targets from being defeated. So both her 2 actives that are actually attacks are permanent execute skills without any further conditions. Pretty sick. Also, she has lifesteal, so she will be healed for 100% of total damage dealt, and it will also weaken all enemies that are hit by attacks of Dark Ludmilla. On top of that, new enemies that are entering the battlefield will also be weakened straight away, and if she takes damage from an attack and survives until after the end of the turn, she will heal for 10% of max HP, similar to the Divine Guard passive. But she's also granted stealth, which serves as a very helpful purify. And now you can think of Light Anya. This healing is increased to 75% of max HP for the first 3 times. It triggers either after entering the battlefield or after using Unleash Chaos. So this 75% max heal can trigger up to 12 times per battle. This in combination with her very strong armor at full awakening and the Hold Crown Plus passive makes for a very compelling active and passive package. So all in all, we still don't have a fully fledged guardian of the dark element, yet another conditional guard instead. And so to me she feels a bit like a mix of Cthulhu, Dark Cinderella and Freya, to be honest. She has the spirit stealing and executing from Dark Cinderella, the mega poison and healing effects from Cthulhu, as well as the guarding a little bit, and also the kind of guarding as we saw on Freya, who was the first unit ever who could become a guard while also having a refreshable Hold Ground Plus. Now the package is extremely strong, don't get me wrong, One thing that I have to point out is that she is quite weak to stun as long as her Hold Ground Plus isn't triggered at exactly that point, or she already used Unleash Hell. Sorry, Unleash Chaos, not Unleash Hell like Dark Lancelot. But given that she is built a bit like wanting to counter burn units, that is a bit of a struggle for her if she gets stunned by these burn units. So yeah, having a stun absorber alongside her might be nice. Although the two best stun absorbers in the game right now are Light Anya, who is herself a guardian. You might wanna consider running that, although then you might not make full use of her kind of guardian side of the skill set as long as she doesn't get kills. Or you also have Dark Ludmilla, who on the other hand doesn't really like to be run alongside guards too much and doesn't really stun absorb if there is any guardian with her. So Dark Ludmilla being very prone to actually being a guard, maybe something to consider there, but really this is not to downplay a lot of these strengths that Dark Ludmilla obviously brings to the battlefields. Perma Execute is pretty crazy, something we haven't seen before. A lot of spirit stealing going on in her skill set as well. She has the very strong armor and also team support, and honestly, even though we have an awakening scaling in her skill set for her armor, I feel like one copy is also pretty good value for this Dark Ludmilla, because she might only be taken out by execute skills early on anyways, and even then might help to take off a little bit of a heat of enemies. Although, yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a struggle. I mean, obviously you would like to have her fully awakened so she can make full use of all these heals and doesn't get executed too easily, and hopefully can execute some of the enemy units as well. She is quite the interesting hybrid. She is obviously geared towards poison, so if you run a poison team, then this is something that you will probably want to pick up for sure. Despite not having any stun features in her skill set, I think she can also be well run in a stun team. Hybrid teams should also be able to make good use of her. However, running her in a sleep or burn team is generally not a good idea. With burn, not at all. There's really no reason you want to run her in a burn team. She is vulnerable to the self-stuns, but more importantly, she cannot enter Chaos Rage if she is run alongside other burn units. And she also distributes burn wards to your allies and stealth to your allies, so you really don't want that in a burn team. In a sleep team, yeah, also not really, because she just wakes up enemy units left and right probably with the mega poison spreading alone. In a cursed sleep team she can work, but yeah, if you run regular sleep, this is also not the unit to bring back sleep into the top meta. Let's see if she can actually rise to the top tiers. Her not being universally usable is a bit of a setback, but honestly she has a pretty complete skill set besides the slight weakness to stun. But even there we have some stun immunities at some points in her skill set as well. So it might just be enough, and I definitely have much higher hopes for this Dark Ludmilla than for Dark Kaguya. Definitely another league with this Dark unit, and also a unit that has much better synergies, I think, with the other top Dark units like Dark Lancelot and Cthulhu, although these two have declined over the last weeks for sure. Now, in any case, before pulling, I recommend that you wait for the fountain to arrive so you can get some nice fountain rewards if you pull her. Something we also need to hold our breath for is the other two units that will come after her in Dark Clarice and Elizabeth, both of which, at least in the boss skill sets, are dark. But of course, there could be a twist coming from Sigza in terms of what their skill sets and elements actually are in the playable SSR versions. Stay tuned for my reviews on them. But if you are deciding to go for Dark Ludmilla, I wish you best of luck on the summons. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe to become a true carrot. And as always, thanks for watching.